It's great to see such a huge turnout, and this always brings me back to the days when we all thought it was hopeless. We all thought that things were looking so bad, and then a group of a few hundred people assembled here in this very auditorium and made real change. We organized events with over 10,000 people at a time during the trucker convoy. Ultimately, through a combination of strong protests, litigation, and just changing minds, talking to neighbors, talking to friends, a lot of minds have changed, and a lot of people are questioning things they wouldn't have questioned a couple of years ago. And that's what this group is really all about. For those of you who don't know me and don't know this group, my name's Jeremy Maddock. I've run with the legal team and the education team and various teams here at We Unify, and worked in a number of events. And like I said, this place here, Oaklands Chapel, is sort of the heart of that. And I just want to extend a profound gratitude to Oaklands Chapel and to Pastor Dan Anderson. Without that gracious hosting, a lot of this wouldn't have been possible. And for anybody here who is a Christian and who's looking for a church, whatever your background is, wherever your faith lies, or whatever you think, this is a welcoming community. This is a place where you will be able to speak and to be inquisitive and to communicate with other believers. And it's also a place that's freedom-loving. It's a place that didn't bow down to mandates and didn't bow down to tyrannical government overreach. And for whatever reason, things were okay here. We weren't shut down. So that was. But we're here tonight to speak to a man who suffered a lot more than what we suffered, and who stood by his principles to the very point of going into a jail cell, who tried to feed the homeless and the hungry both physical food and spiritual food in a dark time in our society, and who didn't compromise his principles. This is a man who grew up in a communist regime and who recognized the hallmarks of that kind of regime coming to Canada here and now and in our time. And he wanted to do something about it, so he kept ministering, he kept preaching, and when it came time, when those days that we all remember so well, when the truckers were protesting and so many people were waking up and saying enough is enough, Pastor Artur Pawlowski delivered a sermon to try and just keep their morale up, just try and help them go through a difficult experience in their lives and keep them hopeful. And for that message of hope that he delivered throughout the pandemic era restrictions, he faced profound legal consequences and still faces profound legal consequences. And he's going to tell us a lot about what those are. But I do think that this was part of the battleground, the churches in Alberta, because we didn't face quite the same level. Churches here in BC, some of them got ticketed, but we didn't face quite the same level of violence as some of the pastors in other parts of the country did. And in Alberta, I mean, I remember obviously hearing about Grace Life Church as well, and near Edmonton, and they put up a fence around the church to prevent people from worshiping there. And they had security guards patrolling around the church to prevent people from entering, to prevent people from gathering. And this was Canada, and this was the government of Jason Kenney, a conservative, oddly, somebody that a lot of conservatives had faith and trust in. But I think those images, and I think that reality hitting home, is a big part of why Jason Kenney is not Premier of Alberta anymore, and why there is huge blowback and pushback against the tyrannical regime that we've seen in Canada, and why Justin Trudeau will, God willing, be out of office in But in order to make that happen, we have to keep fighting. We have to keep this movement together. Just because the harshest of the restrictions have been lifted does not mean that our government is leaving us alone. In fact, the greatest, some of the greatest punishments and consequences that Pastor Pawlowski faced were when he was speaking, not even about what he was doing, it was about what he was saying. We have a society now where social media is being strong-armed by the government to censor people. And those social media companies that don't censor could find themselves banned from Canada. So just because you don't have to show a vaccine card to go into a restaurant or a mask to go into the grocery store doesn't mean that you've got your freedom back. It means that the state is doing a lot of the same things in a more covert way. And that's why this group, We Unify, is so important. We see what they're doing, and everybody who's here tonight should do their best to get involved in fighting back against tyranny. We meet here every Tuesday night. This is obviously an incredible turnout, a lot of amazing people here, but every Tuesday night we have 30 to 50 people here talking about what we can do, talking about how we work and fight back together. Over the summer, there's going to be a more social aspect to that, barbecues, learning and teaching opportunities, finding skills. That's what we want to grow into, because this isn't just a political war, it's also a cultural war. We want a strong culture, a strong community, and that's what we're working on creating. But just to talk about community and culture, I think now is the appropriate time to pass it on to Pastor Pawlowski and let him speak his mind.
Thank you so much for coming. I was supposed to wear a suit, but my wife gave me blue pants and a pink shirt. I said to her, she says, it's not pink, it's peach. And it's summer. And you're in Vancouver Island. So I guess I fit perfectly. It is what it is. Early on, being a married man for about 150 years at least, I learned very quickly not to fight sometimes. Definitely not the fights that I know I'm not going to win, and I like to win fights. And also I learned, and this is an advice that I want to give it to the younger generation, do everything in your power not to turn your wife as your enemy, because sooner or later you will have to go to bed and you will sleep and you will have no idea what is being done to you when you're in your own bed. So, well, that's what I learned, and so far so good, I'm still alive. I was asked to share the story of the COVID craziness, and it is truly a crazy story. If this was a story from Czechoslovakia or Poland under the boots of the Soviets, it would be pretty much, well, it would be a crazy story too, but it would fit what we were experiencing growing up under the boots of the Soviets. But this is a story straight from our wonderful, amazing country called the Dominion of Canada. Well, now I call it the Chinada, because of what we are seeing those wannabe tyrants, or as I call them, the pharaohs, are doing to all of us. And that's why I think it's so important. I still believe that Canadians do not understand the importance of my case. So here is the story. I'll try to go fast because there's a lot of things that happened, and many of you have seen my story from that video during the Passover celebration when illegally the police officers with bylaw services and health inspectors illegally invaded our holy place, our place of worship. And I was not prepared for them to come in. I've told them they're not allowed to come in. I trespassed them. And that's why I was shocked when they did it anyway. And the biggest shock was when I turned to my right and I saw them all muzzled like monkeys coming into the place. You see, we have never shut down our church, and people that would come to our church, most of them were not muzzled. And even if someone would come with a face covering, very quickly, usually after the second song, they would take it down because no one else would wear it. So when I look at them, I was stirred immediately because all of them were muzzled. And I said, okay, there's something horrible happening here. I ran to the pulpit. We already had a few people in the church preparing, the prayer warriors, the worshippers. And I took the cell phone and I started to record what was about to happen. Why? Because many times authorities, police, bylaws, politicians, mainstream propaganda, they would lie. And they have no problem, believe me, to lie. They have no problem to stand before the judges, swear on the Bible, and lie. Manufacturing documents, making stuff up. In the face of evidence, they have no problem to lie, those people. So I recorded it, and I was preparing a sermon from the story of Moses. Let my people go. So that's what I had on my heart. Get out. Get out, you Nazis. Get out, you Gestapo. Just get out. They wanted to have a conversation with me, but I'll have none of it. Kick them out. I told them to do not come back unless it's with a warrant. But why I said it, I have been widely criticized by in certain circles, especially the clergymen, that I was un-Christian. I was un-Canadian. Well, I'm a Polish immigrant to start with. I am not polite as you are. If I see evil, I will punch it in the face. That's the Polish style. And I will not be apologizing for it. I'm so sorry that I punched you in the nose. No, I wanted to punch you in the nose, and I did it, and I'm not sorry for it. So my story started way before, and I just want to let you know how it started so you can understand that for me this was not my first rodeo. This was not the first encounter. It was many encounters with authorities before. So we were a very successful business people. We were building houses. I was working for the richest people on earth, building their multi-million properties. We had a media outlet. We were doing really good. We were developers. I was doing renovations, malls, apartments, you name it. But God called us into a mission field. And out of all the missions, He called us to the homeless that we had no idea. We didn't know anything about it. You don't call a rich man to the homeless, because I'm telling you, I had no idea what those people are facing. But we knew God, and we wanted to serve Him, and we wanted to do our best. So I started to work with the homeless people since 1999, and then full-time since 2005. And it was then when we both left the business realm, never went back, lost millions of dollars, properties, houses, and we started to work with the homeless people, where I received my first shock when the police officers and the Bible services showed up, and they said to us that giving free goods and services in Canada now is prohibited by law. You're not allowed to feed another human being. It's like, are you serious? They said, if you continue feeding the poor, we're going to charge you. I said, well, then bring it on. We survived the Nazis, we survived the communists, I'll survive the bylaw services and the police attack on us. So they did. And I started to receive tickets for giving free goods and services. In the city of Calgary, if you give a sandwich to a dying child, you just broke the law. But there is more. They came back and they said, well, by the way, giving printed material, that's also illegal. So the police came and confiscated all of our Bibles and gospel tracts. And I'm talking about 2005. So I started to yell and scream. God has given me, my mom a couple months ago, she called me and she is monitoring what I'm doing, and when I'm posting stuff or other people are posting, and she says, well, it looks like you're still yapping. And I said, yes, Mom, I'm still yapping. Well, you're pretty good at it, so keep yapping. So now I have an order from my mom, and the Bible says, honor your father and your mother. So that's what I'm doing. Well, the truth is, I was always a big mouth. I would not attack you, but if you came for a fight, I would give you your money worth. I was a professional boxer, I was a martial art expert, teacher. I used to teach police officers how to do self-defense, and if challenged, I fought. I would not run away from a fight. So this fight came to me. I was not looking for it, but it came. I decided to stand up and fight. They confiscated our Bibles, our gospel tracts. Then they came back and they said illegal signage. I received $10,000 tickets for having a sign, illegal sign saying Jesus is King or Jesus loves you. I was charged with illegally congregating in a park. And we congregated in a park that was called the Needle Park. And why? Because you were literally walking on needles. Police refused to show up. We brought the church between about 50 prostitutes and pimps and about 50 drug dealers under the bridge in front of the drop-in center in hell. And the authorities stepped in. And then the politicians started to talk about it. And more police were showing up and more tickets I was receiving. And then I ended up on every news outlet for years. Smeared, attacked, lawbreaker, troublemaker. That was a 10-year war. 300 citations, 11 arrests for illegally feeding the poor, and about 100 court cases at that time. So why am I sharing this with you? Because some people think that they just woke up one day and I just decided to yell at them. Because I'm a horrible Polish person. Listen, I endured 10 years of non-stop ongoing harassment from the authorities. They bankrupted us. We had to sell our properties, our houses. I remortgaged my house 7 times during that time. But we won. 2015, I lost my charitable status. The federal government said to me in 2008, because I speak negatively. If I was speaking positively, then I would be their new hero, the poster boy. But because I was speaking negatively about abortion, homosexuality, and divorce, I'm not eligible to have a charitable tax status. So I started to meet in churches and I started to warn the pastors and others, this is communism, my friends. This is socialism. This is police state. This is not a free and democratic society anymore. Believe me. I'm a Polish immigrant, and if you don't believe Artur Pawlowski, believe my accent. My accent knows what I'm talking about. I grew up in hell, and I don't want my children to grow up in hell, and I definitely don't want their children, my grandchildren, to grow up and face what with my wife, what we had to face. My wife was born in Poland in prison because her mom wanted to escape communism, but she was caught while pregnant. So my wife was born in prison. That's how crazy communism is. And here is what I received. We're feeding the poor. We have a crisis just like you have here. There is thousands upon thousands of homeless people roaming our streets. And I have to let you know how the system works for you to understand why the government stepped in with such a hate. You know that the government pays the shelters per head like cattle. More cattle, more money. Less cattle, less money. In the province of Alberta, the provincial government designates $230 million every single year to fight homelessness. So I started to ask a simple question. Don't do it if you don't want to end up in prison. Where is the money? What happens with the money? Because if you give me $230 million a year to fight homelessness, I'll build them a house.
Yeah.
Every single one will end up with a house. Where is the money? Well, they kicked me out from the radio. Finally, I had to shut down my TV program as well, and then I was taken to court. The provincial, municipal government and the shelters took me to court, trying to shut down our ministry. Within the first 3 months, we took 600 people off the streets. And then I find out that every homeless person is hooked on some kind of drugs. And that's usually from $100 to $1,000 a day. If you multiply this, we're talking about millions of dollars that someone was losing somewhere. So they needed this to stop. 2020 came, we still were doing what we were called to do, feeding the poor, preaching the gospel. We had our own church in a building as well, and the government sent me a letter and said, we're in the middle of this pandemic, this emergency, you have to stop feeding the poor. And I'm thinking to myself, something does not add up. Because when there is, let's say there is truly an emergency, my services now are needed more than ever. So I replied to them and said, you people don't make any sense. We got 15 to 20,000 homeless people facing homelessness every single year. If you shut down the shelters and missions like ours, the soup kitchens, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think those people are going to do? Because I'll tell you, I work with the people every day, and people need to eat. And if you don't provide them necessity supply, and there is no other way to get them, they're going to turn into crime. So you've got 15 to 20,000 people desperate, aggressive, violent, breaking into people's homes, whacking grandma's heads, breaking into grocery stores, into garages, into cars. You people don't make any sense. So I kept feeding the poor, and then the shocker came when 12 officers came to our church service, and they said that I'm going to be arrested and ticketed up to $1 million. So I was the first Canadian, I don't know if you remember that story, Rebel News covered that story, and out of that story, by the way, the democracy found was birthed. We started this because we realized that there is so many hurting people by the government, attacked viciously through the court system, that they needed help. And my story was very popular, it raised awareness internationally, and people were able to give. And now we have 2,400 different individuals being helped through that initiative. So I received a ticket. It was not a big one at that time. It was $1,200. But I was threatened with an arrest and $1 million ticket. And that was going on for the rest of the year. I appealed the decision to the mayor, I appealed it to the premier, at that time Jason Kenney, to every minister, and no one replied. No one cared. And that was my second proof that this whole thing has nothing to do with helping people, keeping them alive or healthy. This is a tyranny, and this is an attack on our rights and freedoms. This is all about political control. So we kept feeding the people, they kept showing up. Every time we were on the streets, we feed people 3 times a week, and 3 times a week we meet in a building, and they were coming to our churches all the time. The culmination of the story of 2020 happened when Justin Trudeau and premiers and the mayors went on television and they said, kids, have a happy Halloween. Remember that time? Just be respectful, stay healthy and have a great time. And just a few weeks after that, do you remember what happened? The same individuals went on television and they said, we have to cancel Christmas. Remember that? We have to cancel Christmas. We're canceling Christmas. And I look at this and I shook my head and I went on television too. Why not? They can do it, I can do it. And I said, you devils, I'm canceling you. You cannot cancel Christmas. You cannot cancel God. and I'm inviting everyone to the biggest Christmas celebration in the land. Thousands of people showed up. We had AAA steaks, which was a killer, for the homeless. We had gifts for the homeless people. And we also had guests, over 100 police officers, 52 police cars, 20 cats on bicycle, chief of police showed up himself, and anti-terrorists came as well. So, I think they did all of that because we did the unthinkable. And I'm guilty as charged. We did the unthinkable. We had carolers. And at that time, you were not allowed to sing. And we brought a special team of carolers. And they were singing the Christian songs. And there was very joyful celebration. The cops were not impressed. And they came bearing gifts. It was Christmas after all. And they gave me 15 COVID tickets for that horrible crime. So that's 2020. I don't know if you remember, our chief of police went on television and said, we will be monitoring the driveways. If we see extra people, we're going to break the doors and we're going to arrest, and you're not allowed to have a brother for coffee, no family dinners. So, you know, we're Polish immigrants. I'm so different than most of Canadians. When they put arrows that way, I went the opposite way. When the door was that way, I would choose a different one. So I was bumping on people and scaring them to death. And they were jumping out like I was walking virus. You know, I don't know. Sometimes I did that for fun. It was very entertaining. So we are just different. And we invited our friends and the whole family for a dinner, and I took a picture and said it to them, come and get me. So they did. Just later on, I think they took the invitation and they showed up. So I had about 40 charges during that time. Week after week, I'll have detectives, the highest paid police officers knocking at my door. I had anti-terrorists, bylaw services, peace officers, police officers constantly monitoring us, coming. One time they blocked our entire driveway and they prohibited people from driving into a parking lot of a church. It took me 45 minutes to fend off those hyenas. And can you believe it that they showed up with a Chinese health inspector to Pastor Artur Pawlowski? That didn't go very well. I said to him, you brought us virus from China and spies from China? Get out of our property. So I was called a bigot, I was called a racist, and all kinds of different things. But finally they left. They showed up with the telescopic cameras later on, and they realized they can't take us down, men, so they started to take pictures of women and children. And that's why I started to call them Nazis. Gestapo, KGB, because if you know your history, you know that that was the tactics that they were using to pressure men. If they couldn't get that men for whatever reasons, they would go after their wives and their children. And then April of 2021 came. They walked into our sanctuary. I kicked them out. I told them to get out and never to come back unless they come back with a warrant. 3 weeks later, they found I call them the three crooked amigos, the first judge in the province of Alberta. His name is David Gates. Maybe he's related to Bill Gates. The very man that is telling you, Mom, you will own nothing and you will be happy. And you will be munching on the crickets. I hope you like them. And you will be riding on a bicycle in minus 35 in Alberta, and you will be happy. While at the same time, the Gates family owns more land than any other human being in the United States of America. The same people that are telling you you will own nothing, you will be eating bugs and riding a bicycle. Just flew a few months ago to Davos with over 1,000 private jets, went into their SUVs and were eating the most expensive steaks, the Japanese steaks. The same people. So they went and they found this crooked judge, David Gates, and believe it or not, he gave them the power to break the Criminal Code of Canada, section 176, 1, 2, and 3, that states clearly that what they were doing to us, the churches, the clergymen, was completely illegal against the Criminal Code of Canada. They were the criminals. They were the lawbreakers. But they did it anyway because they had the backing of the politicians and the corrupted judges. David Gates gave them the power to enter our church anytime they want with whomever they wanted to enter. So they showed up with the SWAT team. SWAT team shows up, I kicked them again, they showed up again, kicked them again, and then they went to the boss of judges. That second crooked amigo, his name is John Rook the Crook. And you can Google them up. They're all highly perverted, wicked, evil people. Those bought and paid for judges. Corrupted as corrupted you can be. John Rook is the associate chief judge in the province of Alberta. One of the highest judges. You know what this evil, wicked man did? He gave them a blanket order that they can now arrest anyone they want within the province of Alberta. Children, men, women, clergy, it doesn't matter. Anyone that dares to oppose the Nazi AHS, Alberta Health Services, can be arrested and charged with contempt of court. So those people showed up in our church, but our church was packed, standing room only. I was already preaching at the pulpit. They opened the door and someone yelled, "Gestapo is here." So I knew something is about to happen. So I said, okay, maybe it's my day today. They're going to have to carry me from the pulpit. But they realized this is going to be blood. There were men standing up, and I'm telling you what the men did. When someone yelled, "Gestapo is here," the men started to take their wallets and their keys, and they were giving it to their wives. They were ready to go to prison with their pastor. And that's what, my friends, this is what is going to take. This is what is going to take when we stand up together in unity. And this message has never changed. United we stand, divided we fall. The last prayer that Jesus had, it was about unity. He says, "I wish that they would be one just like I am with you." God wants us to unite. You see, I don't see colors. I didn't even know it's peach. I don't care if you're black, white, yellow, Martian. I don't care. If you're here, that means you're part of the family, or you need encouragement, you need hope. It doesn't matter. When you're standing in our lineups, that means you need what we are offering. It's the Lord's tables anyway. But that's why they wanted to divide us, to segregate, to separate. You know how predators hunt? They segregate, they separate, they look for the wounded elderly, and then they attack. That's exactly what this government did to us. The predators. I don't call them humans anymore. They are evil, wicked people. They are monsters. Those people in power. Bonnie Henry, she is a monster. And for that, she will have her moments with the judge of judges. And she will stand in front of our God naked. And she will pay for murders. She is guilty of murdering thousands upon thousands of human beings. John Rook gave them the power to arrest anyone. They opened the door. They realized there's going to be a blood. They waited for the people to go home. I went to the car with a friend, my brother David in the back. We are in the middle of the highway, the police behind us, SWAT team. We were told that we are under arrest. In the middle of the highway, in rain. That's the video I'm sure some of you saw. Me on my knees. I was assaulted. I was hurt. They put me in a paddy wagon upside down. That's what the video will not show you. Maybe their personal cameras. They put me upside down, head on the floor. They threatened with more charges just for fun. They said, we will even charge you with assaulting police officers, or peace officers. Well, I was charged with inciting people to come to the church. Duh. If there's a pastor here, that's our job. And by the way, have never changed. I want to incite you to come to our church. If you're in Alberta, Calgary, come to our church. If you are there, I was charged with my brother David. I think my brother David got arrested as a bonus. I think they understand the concept when you go to fast food, it's 2 for 1. I don't get it really. I don't understand why they were after him except just to break our morale as a family. You know, we were charged with inciting people to come to an illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, officiating in illegal gathering. And those are the exact charges you would hear under communism, under Nazism, fascism, illegal gatherings. You know how the Nazis and the communists were calling people like us? Bandits, lawbreakers. A repetition of history. What it was, we're witnessing in front of our very eyes. We spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete, which is completely illegal. On Monday, we were taken, shackled like the most dangerous criminals on earth, shackled together, taken to the judge, and we've met the next crooked amigo. This guy's name is Adam Germain. Adam Germain, that psychopathic judge, he starts his proceedings by saying, we are in the middle of pandemic and this and that, and I turn to my brother David, well, he's a politician, he's not a judge even. He's not looking at the merits of the case. He doesn't care about the case. He is just parroting the CBC. That's it. Bought and paid for. And I was right. It was there where I decided with my family I have to go to the United States and warn them. Because if America falls, there's no Canada. I know that some people don't like Americans, but I'm telling you, your military is one of the biggest jokes I have ever seen. And I have watched a lot of cartoons. We have pretty much no military anymore. You can be transgender there, you can be homosexual. I mean, they're more fired up for the Pride Parade than actually defending our nation. It's a joke. Without Americans backing us up, Canada would be conquered in a heartbeat. It would not be even a big of a fight. So we have to appreciate our neighbors. You don't have to like your neighbors. You're commanded to love your neighbors. I spent 4 months in the United States sharing my story, warning them, telling them that Canada has been taken over. It's China now. We're truly living behind the Iron Curtain. And if Americans, if you're not going to stand up and come and help, they're going to eat us and they will spit the bombs. Spent 4 months over there. Finally, it was time to come back, and Americans are like Polish people. That's why I feel like at home over there, because Polish people are crazy, Americans are crazy. We fit perfectly. It comes to freedom, speech, yelling, screaming, you know, all of that stuff. They're like my family. I mean, we have that every day. I got 3 children. It's just part of life in a Polish home, yelling and screaming and drama. So Americans are like that, and it was a wonderful experience. My wife came and my children came as well, and we were sharing. I think we visited about 30, 40 states during that time, and it was time to come back. It was time to come back. It was there where I met some of the most amazing human beings on earth. I spent 4 months with doctors, biologists, scientists, biologists. I mean, people a lot smarter than me if it comes to this field. And every single one of them, the experts were saying to me, this is a lie. This has nothing to do with biology. The virus is 1,000 times smaller than a bacteria. The piece of stupid Pampers are not going to stop this from coming in and going out. The same way, you see, I'm a man, and I think you guys can relate to this if you ever had children. I think the worst thing that can happen to a man like me is when my children, when they were little, had an accident. And you smelled that accident. I call it the biological attack on me and at home. And my wife was not at home. So the first thing I would do, you know, I'm a smart cookie, so I would grab a phone and says, honey, where are you? Are you far? And if she said 5 minutes, we were saved. Like literally, we would survive this ordeal. If she said 1 hour, 2 hours, I said, we're dead meat. We're not going to survive this. This is a biological attack. It works. I have to deal with this. And you know how it is. You know, I had to change that kit and, you know, fix the problem and deal with Al-Qaeda, you know, over there. And we survived this. But my point is very simple. Right away, you knew there is a problem. You could smell it. You could smell it. So how do you think a piece of nothing on your face is going to stop a pathogen that is so small, that has absolutely no problem from coming in and going out? A lie. Also, I asked those experts, and I said, doctors, explain to me what happens to a human body when it takes this experimental drug. So they told me, and it was not good. And I said, what happens if people will keep taking it? Every single one of them, in different words, but every one of those experts, and I hang around with all of them, the most famous doctors on earth, every single one of them said to me, to my face, 3 to 5 years, millions of people are going to die. Millions. So I came with that story, but of course, before I came, I phoned my lawyers, and I said, is there any trouble for me? No, there are no warrants for your arrest. Plane, you know, board a plane and come. So I did. And just an hour later, I was in Calgary, and our plane was diverted from a regular place to a customs building far, far away from anybody else. And then the police, like bandits, were waiting for me. I was arrested for not wearing a muzzle, and again for, I think, officiating in a legal gathering where I dared to baptize my daughter in a river, and then I was charged criminally at this time for this horrible crime. She was 12 at that time, and I was not hiding it. I think Rebel even covered me baptizing my daughter because I have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not hiding. If you Google my name, my telephone number is still the same when we were in the business. Our home address is there. I remember one time Muslims called me and they said, we're going to chop your head off. I gave them my address and I said, see you in 20 minutes. I can't hide. The moment you allow fear to enter your heart, you're done in the public square. You cannot allow them to scare you. The moment that fear comes into your life, it cripples you, and you will be rendered useless. We must stand up. We must. I was charged multiple times, and then finally I met the judge, the Adam Germain, the third crooked amigo from the province of Alberta, and believe it or not, he found us guilty on all charges. Guilty, of course, guilty. You know, this horrible pastor, he officiated a church service. How dare he? And then he did something unthinkable. He gave us a court order. Me, my brother David, and Chris Scott from the restaurant owner, he gave us an order to parrot government's narration if it comes to the COVID lie. Every time you talk to a human being, every time you preach from the pulpit, every time you do a podcast or a media interview, you must read this statement. The vaccines work, the masks are effective, and all of that garbage. So what I did, I grabbed a microphone, I told you I got a big mouth, and I said, Judge, I hope you're listening. I'll never ever obey this order. So you can send your sheriffs and arrest me. My brother David is less polished than me because We emigrated when he was a lot younger, so he's less polished than me. And he grabs a microphone and says, "Judge, I hope you're listening to me. You can shove it when the sun doesn't shine." And I look at him and like, that's it. You just killed us. What I said was good enough. They're going to come guns blazing. It's over for us. You just finished us up. But they didn't arrest us then. They came later on. And we participated in the rallies. And that time, that moment in history was the most beautiful moment on this soil, on the Canadian soil. Because it reminded me of the solidarity movement. It reminded me of the people that were marching for their children and their grandchildren. When they took it to the streets during the solidarity movement, it was the sweetest and most beautiful thing ever. And the Canadians did it. And I remember marching with 10, 15, 20,000 people week after week on the streets of Calgary. I was preaching in other cities, Edmonton, whatever we could, Red Deer, High River, Okotoks, whatever I could. I was traveling around and giving people the message of hope. That in the end of the day, you got to remember, in the end of the day, truth will win. In the end of the day, righteousness will win. In the end of the day, history is teaching us that the good people will win. Sometimes it has to come, that victory, through suffering. And then the truck convoy came. And you know how many times by the judges, Crown prosecutors, you know I have a probation officer? You know that? It's so funny because I'm looking at the clock, it's 8 o'clock and I'm super dangerous after 7 p.m. For whatever reason I activate after 7 and I'm on house arrest from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And I'm still not activated. I don't know what's happening. Maybe it's the Vancouver Island air. I'm super dangerous apparently after 7 p.m. To come here, I needed a permission in writing from my probation officer to come here and spend some time on this beautiful island. So what happened was we were arrested multiple times with my brother David for just participating in different rallies and different protests. But when the truck convoy came, I was already well established as some called me Canada's pastor, freedom pastor. So the truckers called me and they said, "Pastor Artur, will you do a church service for us?" I'm telling you, they didn't have to ask me twice. It was a great privilege. The judges, the Crown prosecutors, the media, the politicians, everyone, including probation officer, asked me to apologize for participating in the freedom movement, for being part of the truck convoy, and I said it, and I'll say it again, never, never. I will never apologize. I will never say I'm sorry for being part of the truck convoy, being part with the freedom movement. You see, I'm not a schizophrenic politician. I don't wear two hats. One on Sunday and another one on Monday. I just have one, which is truth. So they asked us to feed them. My wife prepared a meal. I'll never forget it because I had lots of time in prison to think about that time. It was chilly and we brought truckloads of food for the truckers, and I delivered a church service in the evening. They asked me to do another one in the morning before their departure to Ottawa, and I'm telling you, I wanted to go. I was ready to go. I had people telling me, "Come, we'll provide everything for you." But you see, we realized that there is so many thousands of people left behind. There must be someone that stays behind and takes care of, that will take care of the rest of the people. So we prayed for them. Off they went. Laura Lynn came. She went to Ottawa. We gave them the banners, the solidarity, all those different things. And I got another phone call to come to Milk River. And here is the phone call that I received. People are depressed. They are losing hope. It's very tough. The police officers are standing in front of children playing hockey game with machine guns pointed at them. Would you, Pastor, come and just cheer us up and pray for us? So I brought my son Nathaniel, he's right there. And then I brought a worshiper. We brought speakers, food, and we went to Milk River. In Milk River, there was a lot of people, but the roads were open when we came. The roadblock was done by our CMP officers. So they blocked the road, preventing people from coming or going to Quds. I delivered a church service. I remember it was crazy cold, 25, minus 30, something like that. And we did the Lord's Supper. We had a Holy Communion with the truckers, and Larry Hader, he was our worshiper. He was singing songs. We had a national anthem, and then I thought to myself, the RCP was there filming me. You know, some people thought that maybe they fell in love because they would follow me wherever I went and they would take pictures. I had my personal stalkers, you know, RCMP and police. So they were filming, they were taking pictures. Well, not a big deal. I don't care. That's why I said, you can film, you can share it. I have nothing to hide, and I'm not ashamed that I stood for our rights given to us by God, not by Trudeau, not by the Liberal Party, not by Conservative Party, by God. God is the one that died for our freedom. Trudeau didn't die for our freedom. It was Jesus that was nailed to a cross for the freedom. The Bible says, who comes to me is free indeed. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, the Bible says, there is liberty, there's freedom. If you want freedom, if you want liberty, invite God of liberty into your land. So I had a crazy idea. I always had crazy ideas. So I went to the RCMP headquarters and I said, would you let me to Quds? Would you allow me to go to Quds? Well, I had a backup plan. I had a helicopter waiting for me already. And then I had a combine ready waiting for me in a field. And then I had a big, powerful truck waiting in a ditch. So I had my backup plan. But I said, hey, let me ask. You never know. So I did. I asked them and they said, sure. They opened the barricade for us, and me, my brother, my son Nathaniel, Larry, and a few other people, we went to Quds. We were taken to the restaurant, Smuggler's Salon, that was filled with people. The police was there, undercover, and people were really sad and by what they have seen, what the police was doing. It was very peaceful. They gave me a tour around. There were no guns. There was no talk of violence whatsoever. Everything you've heard in the media was a lie. Everything. The only violence throughout all of this ordeal was always coming from the politicians and the police. Never from our side. So I did what I do. I did the church service. I gave a 19-minute speech. During the speech, I told them to stand by God's given rights, to fight for their freedom, to do it peacefully, no guns, no swords, but to stand up. I reminded them about solidarity, like Wałęsa, Gdańsk, all of those different things. I said, they've done it before, we can do it again. Who can stop 1 million people in Alberta? Who can stop tens of thousands of truckers? No one. No government. They don't have enough police. They don't have enough RCMP officers to stop people when they say enough is enough. And that's what I witnessed in Poland. But you got to remember, Solidarity movement was a peaceful uprising. It was a civil rights movement like Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi in India. It was never violent. So I did my speech. We had Lord's Supper. We were singing hymns, national anthem. I prayed for people. We had a dinner together. When I came, the roads were open. When I left, the roads were open. Not a big deal. No one stopped me. No one said anything until a few days later. And I remember my last rally was in, I think, Okotoks or High River. And I was telling people, remember their names. Remember the police officers. Take their names. Their badges. Remember the doctors. that wanted to murder you. Remember the nurses that prohibited you to see your dying loved ones. Write down their names. One day, by God's grace, when we get the power back, we're going to go back in history and we'll charge them. We'll charge them with the Nuremberg trial number 2, because what they did is illegal and evil, and they should be charged with it. And that was my last speech. I think it scared them. I think it scared them so much that Tuesday, so that speech was Sunday, Tuesday morning I left my house. Later on we did find out that the police officers were monitoring me for a week in undercover cars. Can you imagine? And that was RCMP officers, a SWAT team, a special unit with cameras, police special unit, and then there was detectives, police, undercover, uniformed police. You know, I felt like El Chapo, Al Capone of Alberta. You know? Can you believe it? The gong show. And then they get upset with me because I go to my knees. You want to play the game, I'm a Nazi? Then do the Nazi style. You have to carry me. And it always upsets them. They would love to do this game, that they are the Nazis, but they don't want to play the whole game. So anyway, they had to carry me. I was interrogated for hours, taken to police station and then to processing, stripped naked, of course, put in a solitary confinement, denied access to lawyers for 3 weeks. But the biggest shocker to this ordeal was the next day. The next day, they came to my cell and they took me and they placed me in metal cages. And of course, I'm new at this game. I'm a criminal. I have no experience, right? I've never been arrested before and placed in a police station, never in prison. Actually, as a pastor, I was a chaplain in a medium and minimum prison in Drumheller. I was ministering there. So that was my experience with prisons. And they put me in metal cages. I have a friend that works there, and he says he has never, in his entire career, he has never seen anyone ever being put in metal cages. Metal cage is a box no bigger than this, when you sit and you cannot move. You cannot stand, you cannot move, you're kind of completely surrounded by metal and glass. To this day, I have no idea why they placed me there, and then they took me from that one and they put me to another one. And that was the game they were playing for 45 days. They would come to my solitary confinement. I was in isolation, being constantly coerced to take the job or the test. And I said, you people are crazy. I'm here already 30 days and you're still asking me to take a test for COVID that you say I cannot have because I'm in isolation for 14 days. And that's science? You people are crazy. So anyway, they would take me from isolation and they would place me to another cell on concrete, no water, no washroom. And that was every night. They took my write-ups because I couldn't have a contact with my lawyer. They confiscated my documents for the lawyer's eyes only. They confiscated my Bible. They would not give me writing materials because I was told I am considered to be the most dangerous offender in the province of Alberta. So that was going on for a long time. And then my son Nathaniel, my brother David, my wife, and the church, they were staging the longest ongoing protest in the history of the prison system outside of where I was being kept. And they were doing it. They were fighting for my life, and they were doing this every single day. And they were threatened with arrests. They got tickets. Some were arrested actually, and Nathaniel had to pay his fine a few weeks ago because we were traveling. We couldn't fight it over there. So some people paid with arrests to stand up and fight for my life. During that time, 5 different inmates already testified to my lawyers when finally I was able to communicate with them, that the guards were giving them incentives to murder me in prison or to severely beat me up. During that time, we were in total isolation. We were not allowed to play. There was no checkers, no chess, nothing. Nothing. I think it was the most horrible experience I have ever experienced in my life. And finally, the inmates, they sent a petition to the director of prison, and they said, if you don't release this man from isolation, you're going to have a riot. I was a hero in prison. Every single time. Every single time I was being taken from my isolation to that concrete cell, the inmates were banging on the doors and they were yelling, "Free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art." So finally, when the director got scared that this might be a riot now, and they released me, I had my entire unit when I was locked, sitting at my Bible studies and at the church services. Every night, every day, I was praying, I was leading them to the Lord. They were crying, and some of those dudes, I'm telling you, I work with the homeless people, but if you see some of them in an alley, you pray to God. Slashed tattoos, markings that they murdered. I was sitting in prison with bank robbers, human traffickers, drug dealers, murderers for hire, you name it. The worst of the worst, and that was me. So I led them to the Lord, I prayed with them, and I remember when they were staging the protest outside and the truckers showed up with the banners and their big honking, and it was incredible. I remember this one guy, slashed and tattooed everywhere. He comes to my cell, I'm thinking, oh boy, what is he going to do? And he just looks at me, and you never know what they're going to say, and starts to cry, and he says, "You just restored my humanity." And I said, "Thank you, Jesus." That he's not here to fight you. So that was going on for 45 days, and then I had every inmate at my tables, and I think that's what was upsetting them. And then one day, the guard comes to me. I was sitting and ministering to one of the inmates, and says, "You have a visitor." And I could look at the clock. They finally fixed the clock because it was broken for like 4 weeks. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. No one notified me that I'm going to have a visitor. It's fishy, but what do? He led me to the admission, and there were sheriffs waiting for me, and I was literally kidnapped from Calgary's Remand Center, shackled like an animal. The penguin march like you see in movies? So I was one of the penguins. And they took me to Edmonton MaxPod. I don't know if you're familiar, if you're not career criminals like me, you may not know, but MaxPod is a place for the most dangerous terrorists in the country. I was locked in that unit in freezing conditions. It was minus 28 outside. They kept me in the freezing conditions by myself in the entire unit. No other inmate was there. And that's where I was almost broken. Because everything they did to me, stripping me naked in front of men and women, and just flipping everything in my cell, and I was there by myself, in isolation. I was not allowed to have any interactions with another human being. They wanted to break me. The Crown Prosecutor twice came and asked if I'm willing to go home. Plead just to one charge, just one, and you can go home. Just one charge, just plead to one. You see, I realized that I have become a little bit more than just a person fighting for my own rights. I have become like a symbol. In lots of countries, a symbol of freedom. A pastor, a clergyman that is fighting for the rights of people to be human. And I remember calling my wife and I said, "How is the reaction? What are people saying? Anyone cares?" And she says, listen, don't quit, don't give up. There's thousands, tens of thousands of people that are cheering for you, they're praying. Your faces in Times Square, New York City, they started to do protests outside of Canadian embassies all around the world. Don't quit, don't give up. But when I was taken, to Max, but I'm telling you, I was that close. I realized I'm not coming home. I realized those people hate me so much that they're going to murder me in prison. And I already knew about the 5 inmates that were getting the incentives from the guards to murder me. So I knew the game is real. This is not a joke. So I called my wife. I was only allowed 20 minutes. So I went out, I grabbed a phone and I said, I don't think I'm coming home. If something will not happen, if I don't know, if the lawyer will not send a letter to the judge to let her know what's happening to me, I am dying here. I am in a freezing conditions. I cannot sleep. I'm shivering non-stop. They're cranking their conditioning. I'm not going to survive this. So she did. She called a lawyer. A lawyer sent a letter to the judge and it scared them. Because now the judge heard, and if the judge heard and it becomes a public knowledge, suddenly the whole world will know I was murdered in prison. And the next day, the officers asked me to pack my stuff, which I didn't have anything because everything was confiscated from me. Because now I was the most dangerous terrorist in the country. And they asked me to come down and moved me from Maxbot to another unit. At that time I had no idea where they are taking me, but I saw humans. I saw people. We had, in Calgary we had blue coveralls and it looked like Smurfs, you know, like a bunch of Smurfs. Looking, especially when we were at the lockdowns, when they were protesting outside, the jail was at the lockdown. And one time they took me where there was hundreds of them sitting. It reminded me of that cartoon, Smurf, 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 Smurf. Everywhere was Smurfs. It was surreal. In Edmonton was pink. So we were pink Smurfs, I guess. But I didn't care. I saw humans. I was in isolation. I was not in a good condition. I was asking God, why me? Why is this happening to me? This was my 16th arrest, 120 court cases already, 340 citations. God, don't you have another? Maybe you could pick somebody else for a change and give me a little bit of a break. Why me? Why am I here? And when they opened the door, it was the weirdest experience ever. The inmates were not your typical inmates. They were jumping up and down, walking in a circle. So I turned to the guards and I said, where am I? And they started to laugh. And they said, you're in the wild, wild west. And I said, what that even means? Well, you're in a psych ward. I said, oh, that makes sense. That's what Soviets did to pastors. That's what the Chinese and North Koreans are doing to the clergy. Now it makes perfect sense. So anyway, I was considered the most dangerous inmate in the country, and they put me with a schizophrenic that chopped his own brother with a machete. And as I walked in, I looked at the table. There's a little table and 2 beds, and he had pens and pencils. And remember, I was not allowed to have a pen because I was too dangerous. So I looked at the guy and I said, you know, I'm considered so dangerous I'm not allowed to have a pen. He said, oh, no problem, you can have mine. So he gave me his own pen, and I was able to keep writing what was happening to me. From that experience, I spent about a week over there. One of the fascinating things in psych ward is how they watch TV. It's actually quite interesting. So they got 2 TVs, and people are walking in a circle, jumping up and down, and it's like really fascinating to play chess with them. It's awesome, because I was winning every single time. You know, that was really good for my morale. You know, like I was the champion in the whole place. Playing soccer and other things, not so good. They didn't understand the concept of the game. But watching TV was the most amazing. You sat down and you said, okay, at least we're going to watch some decent movie. They had movies all the time. However, in psych ward, you only watch a movie 10 minutes. Because some inmate will jump up and change the channel. And then you watch another movie for 10 minutes. And then another will jump and change the channel and we will be watching a third movie. And then the fourth one. I was there for a week and I watched about 50 10-minute versions of the movies, which at that time was quite hilarious because thank God I was not spending more time over there. Another funny part of me being there was when the doctor comes and he says, Mr. Pawlowski, what are you doing here? I said, well, sir, I have no idea. The guards came, they took me from my spot, they brought me here, I'm here. Well, you're not allowed to be here. Actually, it's illegal for them to do that. You are not allowed to be in a psych ward. We cannot allow sane people without evaluation and the doctor's approval to be sent into a mental institution. And I said, well, thank you for your consideration. Thank you that you care. He says, no, it's not about you. You might hurt them. I said, okay, thank you. Thank you for your honesty. And he says, no, don't take it in the wrong way. If you're sane, you can take advantage of those people, right? They're not right. So it kind of makes sense. He said what the administration did was illegal. They took me from a mag spot and they put me in a mental institution with other inmates without doctors' evaluation and the knowledge of Alberta Health Services. Another funny thing was I was invited to Mar-a-Lago to have a coffee with Donald Trump, and it was supposed to happen during my birthday, which is March 28th. However, I was in a psych ward during that time. And I'm sure there were many Donald Trumps and Bonapartes and maybe some other people locked there. But I'll never forget that coffee with Donald Trump in a psych ward. It was not a coffee, it was something. To this day, I don't really know what it was. It was not a coffee and it was not a milk. Definitely not milk. Some white stuff. So I'll never ever forget the taste of that wonderful coffee sitting with Donald Trump in a psych ward in a Max Remand Center in Edmonton. Finally, they released me on bail. I spent 50 days in prison and was charged with inciting mischief, with eco-terrorism. I am the first and the only Canadian in the history of this country not only to be charged with this offense, which is interfering with the crucial infrastructure under the Defense Act. But I'm the first and the only, not only to be charged, but now I am found guilty of that terrorism charge. I'm the first Canadian in history to be found guilty on inciting. Why you should concern about what happens to me? Because now you may have a conversation with another human being in a private setting, in a church, in a restaurant, in a movie theater. It doesn't matter. And if it's recorded, you might be charged with inciting. So for example, if you say to a friend, you know what, there is a rally against this bylaw, that's inciting. You are inciting another human being to participate in opposition to what government is doing. That's criminal. So I have been found guilty. The trial was for 2 days. During my trial, not one witness was called. No one was called. The entire trial was word by word what I said during that 19-minute speech in Coutts. Word by word. The Crown Prosecutor was arguing with our defense what Mr. Pawlowski meant when he said peacefully. He probably didn't mean peacefully. He meant something else. He accused my speech and compared it to Rwanda genocide during the trial. He said that I cost Canadian economy over $400 million worth of damages when I delivered that speech. He said that what I said can be compared to someone that was inciting murder. And the solidarity hoodie that I had during that speech, that sermon, was inciting violence against the RCMP, against the police officers. So ultimately, the judge found me guilty. I'm guilty on all and every charge. I'm facing 10 years of imprisonment as we speak right now. My sentencing is August the 9th. And that's why I will need your help. Because the only thing those devils are afraid of, the only thing they're afraid of, they're not afraid of God. Because they don't think there is God. They think they're not accountable to anyone. They think they're the pharaohs. They are the gods of today. But the only thing they really fear is political pressure. When I was locked there like an animal, Americans were fighting for me, Canadians were fighting for me, Polish people were fighting for me, and they were calling and making them so crazy upset that they paralyzed their entire phoning system. We know that because we have a friend that works there, and she said they eventually had to designate a switch called Artur Pawlowski because their phones were constantly paralyzed. The pressure, the emails, the phone calls were going over and over again. They hated me on the inside more than they hated me on the outside. And then the incentive scheme. I want to talk a little bit about the incentives from the government. The government came and tried to bribe me multiple times. And don't you dare to think that conservative government is better than the liberal government, or the liberal government is better than NDP government. They all are the same. Same coin. The same game. Remember, what was done to me was done by the conservative government, and what is being done to me is done to me by Danielle Smith, the new leader of the conservative government. She is responsible for what is happening to me right now. I'm still on house arrest, like a criminal. She is doing this to me. So first they came and they offered me $2 million and they would give me a land to build my church. And the only thing they asked me to do, just a little tiny thing, withdraw yourself from the public life. Just be a pastor. Just do what pastors do. And I said no. Then they came back and they said, if you will not run for political office, we're going to give you $250,000 a year, and we're going to give you office, the chair. You will become the chair of the public inquiry. Preston Manning, if you know politics in Alberta, Preston Manning took that job. That job was offered to me. And I said, okay, fine, that sounds awesome. It's good money, it's good title, and I will really want to go after the villains. So what happens if I will find your government guilty? If some of your ministers broke the law, if some of the health inspectors, police officers, chief of police, oh, nothing. There's nothing you can do. Ah, so you want me to be your puppet for $250,000 and a fancy title? Not interested. Then they waited a couple months and they said, if you withdraw yourself from public square, we will remove all the charges. You will be free. I said no. And then the last one, she came to me and she said, if I cross the floor, during that time I was already elected, democratically elected, a leader of a political entity in the province of Alberta. And she said, if I cross the floors, if I join the Conservative Party, the United Conservative Party of Alberta, then I will receive a guaranteed office as an MLA within the government in this election. So I said, I'm not you, I'm not the whore of Babylon, I don't cross floors, and I'm not for sale. I'm already bought. Jesus bought me. I'm not for sale. If you have been following Alberta's politics, you know we had a conversation. The conversation was recorded. It was leaked, released. It was actually released by people that are not allowed to do it. And there is an investigation going on. It was not me. We didn't release the video. It was given to people that were supposed to protect us, but they betrayed us. And that created a crazy story in Alberta's politics. But the conversation was pretty much that she is going to do what she promised, but she never did. When we voted for her, she said that she's going to bring amnesty bill for the people that have been subjected to this tyranny. When she was elected, she backpedaled like she is doing all the time throughout her career. She's not doing anything. She betrayed us, and for whatever crazy reason, I don't understand, but the very government that was raping Albertans for the past 3 years, Albertans voted back in. I don't get it. I don't understand Canadians anymore. I don't understand why would you in a right mind vote for the same government that did this to you in the first place. But it is what it is. I guess Canadians need to suffer more to realize how evil those people are and what is the end game. The end game is already in the open. You will own nothing. You will be happy. You will be eating the bags. And of course we know that they're going to kill us with taxes. They are murdering our economy. They are attacking our farmers. In Alberta, Daniel Smith is passing laws that the farmers cannot have more than 4 chickens without a special approval from the government. So this is happening right now in the province of Alberta under the leadership of the Conservative government. There are laws already passed that you're not allowed to collect water from rain. The penalty is $500, a bylaw ticket, if you collect water. So if you think that because they, at their mercy, allowed you to go back to your restaurants and hockey games, and if you think you're free, you're delusional. This is just a little pause, a little stop. And here is what I want to finish you with. If I go down, if for whatever reason God is not going to step in and He's not going to protect me on August the 9th, you're next. Because today, people like me, we are a shield between the corrupted government, the tyrannical, evil, wicked people, and you. And we're standing still tall, and it's not many of us. Majority of the people that I marched with, the heroes that we have seen through the rebel news and other outlets, they are paid, bought and paid for, many of them. And I'm not going to name names because it will break your heart. What happened to some of the people you watched and you cheered, and they had the same incentives that they were offering to me. Money, we'll let the charges go, we will pretend we're after you, but in the end it's going to disappear. And many of them took the incentives. Some of the heroes that I remember I did podcasts with and we marched together, they went so far as to publicly support the Conservative government in the last election last month. That's how crazy the whole situation is. So I was asked to talk a little bit about unity, and I want you to imagine ourselves in the trenches during the Second War or the First World War. Imagine you are next to a French guy. Maybe you don't like French people. Imagine you being next to a Russian guy. Maybe you don't like Russians. Or a German person or whatever person that is there in the trench with you but is shooting at your enemies. During that time, it doesn't matter what is that person's fate, what is his style, what is his language. As long as he's shooting the right direction, he's my brother, he's my friend. For that moment, I am heartbroken when I see so much division and fights between the people that should be united. Because I'm telling you, that big fish that came from my head is coming for your head. If my head goes down, your head is next. That's why I've decided to come. And if there is an opportunity for me to share the story and ignite people or inspire people, then I will come. I'll come and I'll share that, because this is not the time for any divisions. I'm willing to march with anyone that is willing to march with us. My son Nathaniel was just arrested and charged a few months ago, and we brought Josh Alexander, also the young hero, Canadian hero, that is standing against this perversion and grooming of the children, the pedophilia. So they went to give Bibles outside of the high school. Josh was arrested. They burned the Bibles, they attacked, they assaulted the youth. And my son was charged with harassment, and he was charged with another bylaw. Because there is a law in the city of Calgary that prohibits anyone that is willing to oppose the grooming of the children, the drag queen story hour and all that craziness. But what I'm getting at is that just a few weeks ago, The Muslims and the Hindus rose to the plate and they started to take it to the streets. Because you see, I told them, they are coming for our children, for our Christian children. Be sure of it. It's just a matter of when, not if, when they're going to come for your children as well. Atheism, perversion, pedophilia, those people have no boundaries. And they don't care about anyone. They will come, they're like cancer. And cancer that never stops. Evil never stops. Evil must be stopped. As long as you're shooting at the right direction, you're my friend. A couple of weeks ago, I received a phone call. They call themselves the Fixers. They are the friends of Harper, Kenny, and others. They are the most powerful people in the land. They called me and they said, if I withdraw myself from political realm and stop talking, then they're going to fix my problem. And the charges will disappear and the sentencing, and I will not go back to prison. I said, no. So I got a second phone call. And they said the judge was ordered to put you back in prison. Pack your stuff. So that's where it stands today. On August the 9th, I was told that the judge was ordered to put me back in prison. He has 10 years at his disposal. Unless miracle happens or Canadians will rise up for us and put the pressure like never before. And how this can be achieved, we can phone the office of the Premier, you can phone the office of the Justice Minister. By the way, the new Justice Minister right now is a Muslim man, which is quite fascinating because the previous one was a Christian guy. And before him, the very one that arrested me was a Christian man from Nigeria, Casey Madu. After Casey Madu, that loves to be photographed with the Bible, the very one that sent the Gestapo and shut down Alberta's churches, that same guy was caught in corruption and had to step down. And the replacement of that man was another crooked man that was the Minister of Health, Tyler Shandro. Tyler Shandro then becomes the Minister of Justice, without justice, of course, and that's the man that was responsible for my prosecution and persecution. That's how twisted this political arena is. The very people that did this to us are responsible for judging us. We never stood a chance. That's why we need you. We need you to help, to spread the word around, send it, be annoying. When I was with a pastor in Port Alberni, I shared that and I asked people, and one guy already called us and said, I called 110 times. Imagine if only 1,000 people called 100 times. For a few weeks, we got over a month. So what I'm going to do after coming from here, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my time until the sentencing, and I will do as many shows as humanly possible. I'm going to try to be as loud. You see, they came to me with bribery. I didn't take it. They came to me with threats. I did not get scared. They wanted me to keep my mouth shut. When the devil shows up and tells you, be quiet, you yell even louder. Yeah. Benjamin Franklin said, he made this amazing statement, and here's what he said: fear God, and your enemies will fear you. And that's what we're witnessing in front of our very eyes. They're terrified of anyone that preaches and speaks the truth. So I want to thank you. I know that there are some questions. You want to open to questions? I have no problem. When the media call me, and they said, is there anything you cannot talk about or you don't want to talk about? I said, no, fire at will. If I have the answer, I'll give it to you. If I don't know, then I just simply do not know. Because I'm not your typical politician that when you answer him a simple question, he takes you to Kamchatka back and forth, and you have no idea what he talked about. And he never answers the question. You know? We must change that. And we have to remind ourselves that we are the power. It's not them. You got to remember, empires fall because few people were willing to stand up. You know how the solidarity movement started? You know who started solidarity movement? It was a woman. It was a lady. She started it. You know who had the biggest impact during the civil rights movement in America? It was a black woman that refused to go to the back of the bus, if you know the story. Ladies, you are a power horse. Don't you allow any man or anyone to tell you that you have no voice and there's nothing you can do. And men, for some of you, I have just chastising. Be men. It's time for Canadian men. It's time for Canadian men to be men for a change. Rise up, stand up. We were called to be protectors. We were called to be providers. We were called to be those that defend and stand. And the shepherds received the stick to fend off the hyenas or the wolves. And sometimes to bring to their senses the sheep. It's time for a man to rise up, stand up. We have wonderful women. I would not be able to do this without my wife. My wife. That fought for my very life when I was locked like an animal. That is standing with me no matter what. And my son Nathaniel is right there. As a father, I want to tell you, maybe this will sound crazy, but as a father, I couldn't be more proud of my boy than when he came home and said, I got detained today. And then, when he came back and said, they finally charged me. Praise Jesus. Thank you, God, that I have been able to raise with my wife a child that is not a coward. That a young man that understands what's at stake. A young man that is willing to defend you ladies from pedophiles and groomers and perverts that want to come to your washroom. What kind of a human has the urge to strip himself or herself naked in front of little children is beyond me. What kind of a person forces himself into a woman's bathroom? It's beyond me. That's a perversion at the highest level. Leave our women alone. And leave our children alone. Let the children be children. Don't teach them sexual perversion. Don't teach them how to have sex when they are 6. Let them be kids. Let them play. There will come a time when they will learn how to be an adult. So thank you so much. If there are any questions.
So speaking of the corruption in the political and legal system, how would you change things?
Anti-corruption force that will be watching politicians. We must elect judges. We can no longer appoint judges. We must elect them. We also must elect chief of police. Because the moment politicians appoint someone, that person doesn't work for the people anymore, it works for the political realm. So for example, if this party appoints a judge, obviously the judge is working for that political entity. When we appoint the chiefs of police, for example, in the city of Calgary, the mayor, the city councillors are appointing the chief of police. So when the mayor says something, the chief of police is not following the law. He's not following the Criminal Code of Canada or Charter Rights and Freedoms. He's following the directives of the mayor. So, anti-corruption force that will have the teeth to go after police officers, chief of police, judges. If there is a crooked judge, there should be some mechanism to not only remove that individual from the bench, which is unheard of right now. They can do whatever they want. They can say the most vile crazy thing, and there is nothing we can do about it. And also, we have to be able to go after the politicians. When a politician says, I'm going to do this and this and this, elect me, and if that politician is not doing it after the election, that politician should be recalled. There should be a recoil. The people should be able to come together and say, this man or this woman lied to us. She said she's going to do this and this and this. She's not doing, she's backpedaling. That individual should be removed from the place of power. We in Canada, we do not have checks and balances. We have no accountability. We have a soft dictatorship, police state, where police officers are commanded to break the law, and they do it, and there is nothing an average citizen can do about it. Because you can't even take them to court, because taking them to court, it goes through their system. And the judges refuse. We have in our documentation proof of election fraud. Proof. We took it to the judge, he says, I'm not going to look at it. End of story. End of story. It doesn't matter what you have, what matters is who is in power. And now, they are in power. And what is the saddest part of the story is that all of them are in it together. It used to be that the mainstream media was watching everyone. And the politicians were actually afraid of the scandals. Not anymore. Not anymore. They steal, they lie, they cheat. We've lost accountability, we've lost checks and balances, and they are all working for the same entity. The mainstream media, the justice system, and then the political arena. And of course, adding healthcare system to that, that was weaponized during these crazy times. Because don't kid yourself, they weaponized our healthcare system. And they're using it to hurt and to murder people. And then they weaponize the educational system. That the parents have no rights anymore regarding their own children. Like this is communism, my friends. This is socialism. This is fascism. That's exactly what we witnessed when we were growing up. We were owned by the state, and the state was not educating us. The state was indoctrinating us. That's what we have right now. We don't have educational system. We have indoctrination facilities. Those kids, if you talk to them, they have no idea, they don't even know biology 101.
The smallest form of government is the family, and if you can destroy the family, you...
Right? We are witnessing this in front of our very eyes. That's why I say, where are the fathers? Where are the mothers? Because they're coming after your children, people, don't you get it? And if they can take your children, is that not your most precious possession? I mean, not in a bad way, but you know, family, kids. I'm a pastor. I'll say that, and I don't care if it goes public. Be careful, because it's not going to stop. It's not going to go well with you. What happened with the men? They're willing to defend their very own flesh. I mean, forget about the neighbor, but what about your children? What about your mothers? What about your elderly? We've allowed those monsters to take and murder our elderly. The most holy and precious commandment to take care of those that cannot take care of themselves. The widows, the orphans.
They're not trying to hide it anymore.
They're not hiding it. And, but in a way, that's a good thing, especially for a man like me. Because when I was warning Canadians since 2005 publicly, so that's my 18th year, people were looking at me like I'm crazy. Because they were not facing what I was facing. I was the icebreaker, the spearhead, whatever you want to call it, the front runner. But now when they came after your children, I'm thinking maybe, hopefully, they're going to rise up now. Because it's not my children, it's your children.
I said, well, I want to make a difference. And so what you can do is make a list of everyone that you know in Esquimalt, in View Royal, and in Colwood, and contact them and ask them to support me. And better yet, send their names to me, and I'll make sure. It's going to be a contested election. I'll be running for the BC Conservative Party, not the BC Liberal Party. In the by-election on Saturday, the BC Conservative candidate got 19.6%. The BC Liberal candidate got only 8.5%. So everything's shifting to the BC Conservative Party if you're centre-right. I spent 2 hours with a friend on Saturday morning talking to the leader of the BC Conservative Party. So it will be a contested. Now my opponent is Mitzi Dean. She's in trouble if you look at the Times Colonist. She's Minister of Children and Family Development. All the First Nations in BC want her to resign because she and her ministry botched it up in Chilliwack. 7 months. A little boy and a little girl, First Nation, tortured, starved, put in, the little boy died and she did nothing about it. She might get fired. But in any case, please pray for me and please make a list of everyone you know in that riding because it will be contested.
Sir, how old are you?
I am, yesterday I turned 81. I'd like to say that I have now passed the first year in the last 40 years of my life. With the Lord willing, I'll make it to 120, just like Moses and just like Abraham.
Nice. It's just a happy because Caleb was 85 when he was possessing the promised land, and he said, I want the high hills with the giants and fortified cities because I am as strong as I was when we left Egypt. Imagine young people, we have a young fella here and he is willing to run for political office. And then I'm looking at the younger people, where are you? Like, why not? No one? It doesn't matter if you win or not. Be counted. Do something.
The giants will fall. I feel like I'm like David facing a Goliath, but David slung that slingshot and the great big giant Goliath fell down. The giants are going to fall. That's a prophecy.
Amen. Amen. We have all that you want, the enemy just doesn't know it yet.
Hello there.
I'm a Polish immigrant, but I'm a Canadian and I love this land. I believe Canada, and I traveled around the world, is one of the most beautiful places on earth. Let's keep it that way. The only thing that's not beautiful, you know what, I made a statement when I arrived here. This is a paradise, but if I had my way, I would evict all the people from here. To keep it as a paradise. We are the only ingredient that is faulty. Let's change that. Let's have good people rising up and push the evil away. I've heard about taxes here. My heart breaks. A lady told me that they are paying 15,000, 17,000 just because they are in front of an ocean. Are you kidding me? It's all done deliberately. They are eliminating you. They will take over your properties. They will take over the land. That's why they're killing us with taxes, because they want the land. Mark my words. There are coming people here that will be buying your properties. Chinese people are going to buy left and right, and they'll have no problem to pay taxes to the government. This is a deliberate elimination of the middle class in Canada. When they were shutting down stores across the street, the mega stores were open. Have you ever wondered why Walmart was allowed to operate? Have you ever wondered why they had a ride-up in front of IKEA during the biggest lockdowns? Only 500 people allowed, and I could not have a brother for a coffee in my home? Have you ever wondered why? because they're killing, eliminating the middle class. Middle class is highly educated, well-traveled, you're family-oriented people, you got businesses from grandparents, from your fathers, you're hard-working family people. They hate that. They need to eliminate that. They're creating two classes of people. Extremely poor, people that cannot afford lawyers. I already spent over $1 million. Who can afford a lawyer these days? Can you afford $600 per hour bill? Who can do that? If it was not for the donations and crowdfunding, I would be gone. It would be done deal. No one can afford. So that's by design. Very powerful elites, and then extremely poor, chasing after the necessities of life. And then the office of the Minister of Justice. Those are the two individuals that if you annoy them the right way, they might hate me so much on the inside that they will like me on the outside. That's what happened the last time. They hated me on the inside so much that they said we can't put up with this. So they released me. And the phone call stopped because I was free. So they went. With Jason Kenney, wherever he showed up, there were people coming to his every event yelling, "Free Pastor Art." You know how annoying that is for a politician? Everywhere he went, "Free Pastor Art." Mr. Premier, when are you going to release the political prisoner, the Pastor Artur Pawlowski? He hated it. He stopped coming out. He stopped doing public events. He was so annoyed with that story. Imagine the power. Everywhere Danielle Smith would go, someone would ask her that question publicly. Were you going to keep your promise that the political prisoners there's going to be amnesty? Were you going to set the pastors free? She will hate it. And she's an extremely weak individual. As a human being, she's very weak. That's why she's like a flag, you know?
Well informed to find out why the solidarity movement in Poland was so successful. Can you give us a short overview?
Solidarity movement was a fascinating movement because it was done peacefully but firmly. So when it started in 1980, it started by just few people, and that lady, Valentinovich was her name, was instrumental in rallying all the people. A lady that was so courageous, she lost her job, a very similar situation to what we are facing right now. And then the people surrounded her and started to support her, and it grew. Within the first year, Solidarity Movement had 1 million members. And it scared the communist government so much that they outlawed Solidarity Movement. And because they did that, it grew to 3 million people within the next year. So sometimes the bad things are the trigger for something bigger. And that's what I'm hoping right now. What they've done to us is criminal. But I'm hoping that because they are not stopping and they're pushing more and more, now people like you can realize this is not personal. This is an attack on all of us. They're just using this man or people like me as an example to scare the rest of you. Within the next few years, Solidarity Movement grew to such a power that it destroyed the communism in Europe, brought down the Berlin Wall, and the Iron Curtain got broken. And in 1989, just a few years later, so it takes time, it's not overnight. And you know, I always preach in the church that it takes time to break it, it will take time to rebuild it. Everything that is good takes time. So in 1989, Poland had its first democratic election since the invasion of the Germans in 1939. In 1989, the Berlin Wall got broke down, the Iron Curtain was destroyed, and Poland elected their first president and the prime minister in history since the Nazi invasion. So it can be done, but how they did it is fascinating, because they did it with God.
They did it with God. Because what we're fighting right now is atheism, it's communism, it's fascism, it's socialism hybrids. It has a little bit of everything. The ingredients are fascinating because they're all together in this. It's a globalism combination of things. And the only way I know how to fight, and the only way historically I have seen that others fought successfully was with God. So the Polish people were dragging that huge monster of a cross, just as a symbol that we are standing with God. You are evil, but we are standing with God. And that's why the solidarity was one with God on their lips. That's why the clergymen were part of the uprising. That's why the meetings, which were illegal, were done in the churches. That's why they shut down the churches. You gotta remember, we witness, and we are witnessing repetition of history. Why the hatred towards pastors and priests? Why the hatred towards churches? Because historically, churches played a big part in destroying tyranny those years ago. You understand? So they are learning from history. Unfortunately, we have not learned from history as a whole nation. But they are paying attention to history. And they know meetings like this are unacceptable. There is an exchange of information. There is love. There is spending time together. When we come together, we feel stronger. We feel blessed. We feel inspired. We feel we are not alone. That there is another man, another human being that thinks the same way I think. That's power. When the Bible says when 2 or 3 are gathered in His name, that's where He shows up. And I'm telling you, my wife says, give them hope. Tell them about hope. Look, you don't see me depressed and suicidal and, poor me. I share the story, but I'm standing tall because we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet. Sometimes the victory comes through suffering, and someone has to be willing to pay the price. But in the end of the day, we know how the story ends, and it ends always the same way. We win, they lose.
These are going to be our last 2 questions.
There was a group in Alberta who wanted to get some members from UCP on the UCP board or whatever, and they also worked on getting Danielle Smith in. So I just like your comment on that, and then also how to reach people who are still on the COVID narrative.
To the second one, I have no idea. Because this is like a heavy delusion on people. I believe that this is a spiritual thing. You can talk to a horse. You can tell the horse, please drink that water. It's good for you. But if the horse refuses to drink that water, it's going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it. And we've tried everything. We've brought the most amazing minds on earth. I've done tours with Paul Alexander, with Hutchinson, with Mackey's, with McCullough, you name it. All the names you can think of. I've done tours with those people. They're the most brilliant experts on earth. And you can sit and listen to them, and there's still some people that will not believe it. And that's why I know it's a spiritual thing. It's like, I have a problem, maybe you experience the same thing. I would say to people, well, let's see, this is peach. According to my wife and the callers, it's peach. And then the people will say, no, it's black. No, it's peach. No, it's black. And they're willing to kill you. They are willing to kill you and hate you because to them this is black. And this doesn't matter what you say. Logic out the window, the facts out the window. You can show them, you can prove them, you can bring experts and people that will back the story. They refuse to register the truth. So they're bent on destruction. And what I mean by this, it looks like they have been given into the hands of the wicked one, the evil one, to die. And I know that's a sad part, because our family are jabbed in Poland. My cousin would not listen to me 3 weeks after the second jab, boom, died. Healthy guy, no problems. My heart is broken. As a pastor, I deal with adverse reactions on a regular basis, and I deal with people that lost loved ones. I have a hard time to deal with that, because I told you so. For years, I even went to prison for you Canadians, and you still refuse to believe it. So then it comes to how to get those people trust or believe us. It will have to be a miracle. It has to be God that will open their eyes, because I can't. It comes to that organization, Take Back Alberta, I think that's what you're referring to. I'm heartbroken with that. I'll tell you why. Because for the past 3 years, we were raped by the Conservative government. Literally raped. Our elderly were locked like animals. Their loved ones were not allowed to see them and say goodbye to them. I dealt with people in my church. I had celebration of life because other pastors shut their doors, and the Alberta Health Services didn't allow them to even say goodbye after they were dead. I mean, what else can happen to them? They're already dead. But you're not allowed to come and say goodbye. So we did that for those people. It was breaking my heart when the parents were crying for their children because they were not able to even say goodbye. Criminals. Criminals. Monsters. And what that organization did? They advocated to bring the monsters back into power. The same people. The same people that murdered our elderly, muzzled our children, shut down our economy, destroyed our businesses, arrested pastors, the same people, because they were more afraid of the NDP, so they settled for lesser of two evils. And that I'll never agree with. What we need is a new entity. Every politician that did this to you, never ever vote for them. I don't care what they say, I don't care what they promise you, never ever give them your vote or support. Look for another man, a better man, for someone that walked with you to the rallies. Where was Daniel Smith when we were bleeding on the streets of Calgary, fighting for our very lives, nowhere to be found? Where was Pierre Poilievre when we were bleeding, walking in the middle of the streets, fighting against this tyranny that Canada has never seen before? I mean, it's a valid question. I know that Canadians are now in bed with Pierre. He is your new savior. I'm just asking the question for a friend. Where was he? Where was he? Excuse me, sir. You stand for freedom today? Where were you 2 years ago? Where were you when actually it was needed the most? You know, Maxime Bernier, love him, hate him, it doesn't matter. But at least I know where he stood during that time, and he got arrested with the rest of us. And he spoke openly. You know what? He might not be the perfect man, but at least for that, he deserves honor as a politician. And if I was to vote for Pierre Poilievre or for Maxime Bernier, in a heartbeat, even though I have my own beef with some of his lifestyle, right? Maxime is not a perfect man if you know him. However, give honor to whom honor is due for what he did, and my vote would go to Maxime Bernier. Right? Why, oh why, you are willing to vote for the people that betrayed you? Traitors. You know, I have been dealing all my life with traitors, the backstabbers. You know, the Canadians, the good Canadians are people that will apologize for stabbing you multiple times. And that's why in my back you see so many daggers. You know, my wife every day has to pick up few and take out of my back. Why? A traitor. Once is going to be a traitor tomorrow. And there is this saying, fool me once, shame on me. Right? Remember that one? No, fool me once, shame on you. I think that's how it goes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Is that not exactly what we're doing? We're voting those monsters back into power, and we think that because they're a lesser of two evils, so somehow we're going to escape the globalist agenda. They are all in a bed with WEF. Harper, I know Harper personally. We were the only ones invited many times to his barbecues. I know Jason Kenney, I know Daniel Smith, I know they're monsters. They're not normal human beings, they are soul paper. They're sold completely. They sold their souls to the evil one, to the WEF agenda. It was Harper that brought that to Canada, if you remember. I remember, many times I see it in social networks, do you miss Stephen Harper? I don't miss the guy. He was not a good man. But it's like, what's up with this guy? Well, later on we find out. He had about 75 staffers that were homosexual activists within his cabinet. There's stuff that Canadians just do not know, maybe because they don't want to know, maybe because it's just too crazy. And if I start to share stories with you with Jason Kenney and children in Thailand, you would say, Art, you're out of lunch. If I tell you I had people from CCC in my house telling me, judges, chief of police, politicians, when you would hear them telling us 80% of politicians are either bribed or blackmailed in Canada, people don't want to believe that stuff because it's just too much. It's just stories that are overwhelming and people just don't know how to deal with that. So I don't share many things. I'm just telling you, they're not good people. They're not good people. Pierre Poilievre went to China. When he came back, he was not the same man. You can add to the story whatever you want, but I'm telling you, he is bought and paid for. He might do some good stuff, Daniel Smith might do some good stuff because they have to. It's the same coin, the game, good cop and bad cop. So sometimes they will do something good. Even the liberals will do something good from time to time. Even the NDPers will do something good from time to time. But overall agenda, the years ahead, what they're moving towards is the Agenda 2030. It's you owning nothing, you walking or driving a bicycle, and then possessing your land, having the front beach, ocean properties, flying private jets, eating Japanese steaks while you're munching on crickets and bugs. That's the agenda. Pay attention.
In the struggle from your priest and our Father now, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and power and glory forever and ever. Amen. Pastor.
Before I was arrested, the last arrest, the 50 days, I wanted to create a political entity. Because I realized, and I hate politics, believe me, to a point that when I meet with politicians, and I always meet with politicians all my life, I need a shower. I feel dirty. I mean, that's how I hate this hypocrisy that is coming from those people. And don't get me wrong, there's still few good politicians. Not all of them. It's not all lost. There's still some good people there. There's still some good police officers. We were buying flowers and a wife of a police officer came to us crying and says, there are police officers meeting for prayers in the city of Calgary and they're praying for you. And they're standing with you. They're not as brave as you, but there are still good people within the system. There's still some good doctors. There's still some good nurses. Not many, but there's still some good people out there. So before I was arrested, when I did the rallies, I created an organization called the Solidarity Movement of Canada. It's just a movement. But it had like thousands of people within a few days, and it was growing, and I said, maybe we can repeat. Instead of building something brand new, let's just use what worked before. Let's not reinvent the wheel. So we created the Solidarity Movement of Canada as a vehicle to educate people and to inspire people to stand up. But I wanted to do a political entity as well. But I didn't make it. I got arrested, and I think they knew my plans. They knew I'm going to engage them on their own turf, in their own game of politics. So they picked me up and they arrested me. When I was released from prison, I thought I don't have enough time because the election in Alberta was just the next year. I was released in April, and the election was to be next year. So we had a year to prepare. And I was approached by an organization that was already registered in the province of Alberta, and they asked me to run for the leadership of that political party. And the first thing I said, what it says here, stupid? I'm not interested. But then I remembered my prayer in prison cell. When I was sitting over there and I stood up like a wounded lion and started to walk back and forth, and I said, fine, if they will not allow me to be just a pastor, I will become a pastor politician. And what was chasing me yesterday, I will be chasing tomorrow. And just kind of came out of me. And then God reminded me about that prayer. So I said, yes, I won with majority. Thousands of people voted for me. I became a leader of a political entity. And I started to do tours. And believe it or not, I had hundreds of people showing up in Alberta to hear us speak. I was bringing Paul Alexander, I was bringing Marquis, I was bringing Hodgkinson, I was bringing other people to educate. And the last one we did was Brooks and Medicine Hat. It probably means nothing to you, but that's where is the riding of the sitting premier right now. And 600 people showed up. And it scared them to their deaths. Because they realized if I can pool so much interest in a political realm, not as a pastor, but as a politician now, this can potentially be dangerous. So you know what they did? 9 members of our political party removed me against the thousands that voted me from being the leader of that political party. Just like that. And they did it for my birthday as a gift. They kicked me out. So I said, God, I'm done with politics. Look, those people are stupid, they're crazy, I don't understand Canadians anymore. Maybe they need to die. I don't know. I don't know what else to do. But you know, that's Artur Pawlowski. But then God shows up. And my wife, he uses my wife. She's very efficient. And then I said, fine. And I have been blessed with amazing people in our church, and I have amazing friends. And let me tell you this, do not regret that the previous friends left you. They were never your friends. No, now those that are with you today, through the blood, through the sweat, through the difficulties, those are the real friends. And God has given us unbelievable, amazing friends. And you know what they did? Don't worry. We'll help you. We'll help you to start another political party. And believe it or not, we did it in 9 days. In 9 days, I was kicked out from one political party, and God has given me as a gift in 9 days another political party, which is called the Solidarity Movement of Alberta. And we have our own conservative, a real conservative political party. And of course, we did it in 9 days, so we didn't have time to structure it, and websites and bylaws and constitution. But we already did it. We just did that a few weeks ago. So I'm a leader of a new political entity in the province of Alberta. So after the sentencing, we'll see what God has in store for me. We're going to keep plowing the province of Alberta. I was already asked to start the same thing in other provinces. So other people are catching up. We'll see. I don't know the future, but yes, I am a politician now. I am a leader of a registered entity. And here is a funny part of the story. My charitable tax status was taken away. When you are a church entity, you can only give so much. When you are a political entity, it's like the sky is the limit almost. It's unbelievable. So I can give tax receipts, I can give incentives. It's actually pretty good now, you know. So what enemy meant for evil, God used against the evil. So I want to end with that, because as much as you can see the tyranny and his tough and his heart, and it looks like the enemy controls everything, that's not true. Enemy doesn't control the kingdom of God. Enemy doesn't control you. Enemy doesn't control the power of the Holy Spirit, the power of the truth, the power of what's right. And sooner or later, we've seen it in history, they will come down, and we will replace them.
Thank you. Would anyone like to join me and lay hands on Mr. Pawlowski and his family? We'll pray over him and bless him. We are nothing without God, and you know, the scriptures say. I'd like to bless Mr. Pawlowski. Thank you, Lord.
Lord.
Put a hedge of protection around him. That he is an obedient servant of yours, and that may he continue to be bold.
Yes, Lord.
And continue to be protected, and continue to be a beacon of light on the mountain and on the hillsides. Thank you, Lord, for putting Mr. Pawlowski in my life and in our lives as an example. Give us strength that he and his family be protected.
Bless them. Bless them.
Jesus. Thank you, Lord.
Give them the strength.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I remember the first time I saw him was in the United States. It was in Tennessee with Pastor Locke.
Yes.
Do you remember, Pastor? And boy, you came the other week. You and Nathaniel were there speaking too. That was a wonderful, wonderful message.
Because we are pushing a referendum on independence, that every province should be part of the Confederation but run independently.
Yes.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Yes, that's how it's
But
supposed
now they're treating us like slaves.
Yeah.
We're slaves.
Well, you're a threat.
Working for Quebec and Ontario. You know which province is the richest in the country? It's Ontario.
Yeah.
And you know that we give them billions of dollars, even though they are the richest.
I would have thought Alberta. No, Alberta pays everything.
No, we pay billions of dollars to Quebec
so does
and,
BC. We pay
and Ontario. And you know that city of Toronto has more representatives than entire Vancouver Island.
Yes, that's right, they do.
You have no chance.
And they just elected a
Every
communist.
single time you want to vote for you outvoted.
Yeah.
Do you know that if we come together, Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Northwest Territory, Yukon, what did I say, Manitoba? 6 provinces out of the Confederation, we have less members of Parliament than Ontario alone.
No. It's all, I mean,
Think about
all
equality. Think about it before we even start voting.
It's over.
Regarding your turmoil in the cage,
Yeah.
how did you survive that? How did you cope?
Well, physically it was very difficult because it was extremely hot and I was suffocating, like literally. I had to unzip myself and I had a difficult breathing
and it was extremely cold, hot. But thank God it didn't last for a very long time. I don't know how many hours they kept me there, but I survived. And that was on the second day. So maybe if they did that later on, I would break. But because I was still relatively physically strong, because you gotta remember, when I was released, my back was so messed up after being taken to a concrete cell so many times that my chiropractor, it took him 5 visits to my home to just straighten my back. That's how bad it was. He says he has never seen such a severe damage that I had.
But mentally, how did you get through it?
Well, God.
Faith.
Faith. Nothing else. I would be a liar if I would say to you, I'm so strong and, you know, no, it was faith. It was an understanding that the suffering is for something bigger that I don't understand yet. Now I know from the perspective of time. At that time I just had to trust. I said, God, I don't get it. I don't know why they hate me so much. I'm not their enemy. I'm not the enemy of the guards. I'm not the enemy of those people. I am enemy of corruption. And to this day, I'm not an enemy of politicians. I am an enemy of corrupted politicians.
Let me ask you this. What's your term? How would you define the word arbitrary? Arbitrary.
Well, I would say decided. I would say the people have an agenda and they are willing to break every law that there is under the sun to bring that agenda. Everything that was done to me had nothing to do with keeping people healthy or following the law and order. Nothing. Zero. Everything that was done to me was individuals that were entrusted with keeping the law, breaking the law. My arrests were illegally done. They were done in a brutal way. I had scars, I still have, for over a month after my last arrest. They brutalized me. They assaulted me. They handcuffed me in such a brutal way that the handcuff cut my skin around it in both wrists. It took over a month for the scars to heal in jail. So they had an agenda. They wanted to make an example. They wanted to make sure that the world is watching what can be done to any man that is daring to oppose them. And it's very fascinating because they didn't have to. If this was about law and order, they didn't have to arrest me in the middle of the highway. They could call my lawyers and say there is a warrant for your client's arrest. He has to turn himself in. And it would be end of the story. I'll have to turn myself in. There was no other way. But they didn't do it. They
just trying to make an example.
They chose highway arrest. They chose a SWAT team in my church. They chose SWAT team in front of my home. They chose them because they were making a statement. But you know what? They wanted to make an example out of Artur Pawlowski, but I think God is making an example out of them.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Prime Minister. I want you to be the Prime Minister.